sensitive internal document that got leaked a couple of weeks ago. And I can tell you that I read through it. And they identified bit by bit everything from the mortgage interest tax deduction to, which I raised a couple of weeks ago, to Medicaid itself. They have identified as wanting to eliminate in order to pay for Elon Musk's tax breaks, Jeff Bezos's tax breaks, Mark Zuckerberg's tax breaks, and other giveaways and other sorts of giveaways to the wealthiest people and corporations in this country. And the biggest one, lock in everybody, okay? The biggest one that they are going after is Medicaid, okay? They have Medicaid in their sights and they want to cut $2 trillion. Remember? They need to find $4 trillion. And they've got like maybe, this is $4 trillion. They maybe have like one knuckle in tax increases in terms of paying for that. They maybe have like one knuckle in tax increases on middle class and low income people. You're just not going to get that money for it. And they do not have, I mean, you can cut every wasteful practice and you're not going to get close. Because by the way, what are they not going to include in their government waste assessments? Take a big guess. Defense spending. One of the biggest areas of federal expenditure and waste that we see. I sat on the oversight committee, y'all. I have seen defense contractors price gouge and loot the public in such inordinate ways. And you all can tell me, service members who are tuned in right now, you all see it all the time. Like the how a lot of things don't add up because it's defense contractors who are making a killing. And just so you know, when you see these big tech people, many of them are also defense contractors. Elon Musk gets his money from defense. SpaceX, they put all these slick branding on it, and they like to brand themselves as tech and as like all of this other stuff. But a lot of them get their money through defense contracts. You hear me? And so when they talk about waste, in one of the areas where there is evidence for some of the largest amount of federal waste, because mind you, the Pentagon has not passed an audit. The Pentagon fails their audit all the time and has yet to pass an audit. But this is where they're getting their bread buttered. So they want you to think that it's the viejita who's getting Medicaid, who's getting her insulin paid for on Medicaid, that is the waste, because what they don't want you to do is to look at US defense spending, particularly defense contractors, and even in that under area of defense contractors, their defense contracts. Microsoft, Amazon, a lot of these AI initiatives, defense contracts, which by the way should not be legal. And we saw this. We saw some of the early use of AI being used in war, which in a way should absolutely be illegal. Robots make mistakes, and if you accidentally bomb a building or just bomb a building indiscriminately without proper human oversight, which by the way, we saw initially tested on Palestinians in Gaza, but that's not going to stop there. If you allow that to continue, it can continue. So anyways, what they don't want you to look at is their defense contracts. Also, Amazon, Microsoft, their integrations with ICE and immigration as well. I'm going to get to these things, but we have to lay out the full landscape, okay? So if we want to know what the motivation is, why this is happening, understand that it is deeply tied to the deadline that billionaires and the rich are confronting right now this year in 2025. And what they want to do is suspend the actual assistance that you receive, whether it is through education, whether it's through healthcare, etc. They want to suspend that and gut that in order to finance their own public looting and public coffers, okay? So when you see these plane crashes, when you see the disruptions with air traffic controllers and things like this, or when you see all the stuff that's happening at the FAA, understand, again, that happened, like this happened, and what happened, the FAA administrator was on leave. He had retired. Why? Because he had challenged SpaceX and wanted to find SpaceX. So understand, when you see all of this stuff happening, it's not all random overwhelm. It's about the money. Immigration, these massive expansions on immigration, they want you to believe that they're only going after criminals. They're going after everybody. They even arrested Puerto Ricans. They're going after everybody. And understand that this is how indiscriminate they are being. And they are doing this because also, you know who finances a lot of Republican campaigns? The private prison industry. They know that they actually can't deport all of these people at once in one go. And what do when you grab someone off the street but you can't deport them for a long time? You build private prison camps. And this is we already saw them start to do that. And this is, especially with passage of certain legislation, this is what it's set to do. Okay? So understand the central motivations here. This is about preying on working class people and stoking racial division so that working people turn against one another in order to vacuum and suck up what little is left of American public infrastructure and life and hand it over to Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and all these corporations, etc. Okay? It's important to lay that out. Now, what do we do? Okay? What do we do about it? There are just like, okay? I know y'all are I can already hear, but just lock in for a second. Just like these problems can seem comprehensive and also overwhelming and complex, understand that we outnumber them. We outnumber them, okay? The people outnumber the 1%. The people, and it's not just about 1% and 99, it's not just about that too. Also, everyday people of all sorts of income brackets also overwhelm the number of the corrupt, okay? Understand our strategic advantages in this moment. We outnumber them. Do not forget that. We outnumber them so dramatically that they have to try to control media and communication channels and apps, etc., because they want to and need to invoke docility, passivity in the masses in order for them to get away with what they're doing. Even before this most recent movie season, I would always make the comparison to The Wizard of Oz. But so it's not just a Wicked thing, okay? Understand that authoritarians are kind of like the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. They rely not on their actual power. They rely on their perceived power. So, principle number 1 in what you can do is that when one of these things comes to your backyard, when it actually, when it comes to you, and I will give examples, but when it comes to you, when it does, you can resist. And what that happens over millions of people is that you generate enough friction that they cannot go as fast as they want to go, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples. that have already been working. Let's start with immigration and ICE. When people say, what can we do? You can do the things that apply to you. In my community, we are a heavily immigrant community. And so ICE raids deeply affect and disrupt our community. And the prospect of ICE raids deeply disrupt and threaten our community. So, number one, if you live in a community with a lot of immigrants, know your rights. That's one tangible thing you can do that I want you to do. And I'm going to go through what that means. And that means know your rights if you are a US citizen as well. Okay? Here's one way that we're going to create some friction in this system. Okay? Tom Homan, who's directing a lot of these ICE operations nationally, etc. He went on TV practically crying. This dude was whining his ass off because ICE went into the city of Chicago and Chicago had prepared for them. Community organizers, activists, and their mayor and local elected officials who were solid on this issue, they educated the city on their legal rights. Because what ICE tries to do is that they rely on people not knowing their rights in order to enter buildings, in order to search workplaces, etc. So when you know your rights, you are able to tell them no, and they do walk away. So you need to know your rights. If ICE comes to you as an American citizen, still assert your rights. Because what you can do is protect people around you and also make sure that you are slowing down this system. The slower they operate, the less they can break. You hear me? This is why this is strategically important. The slower they operate, the less they can break. And so know your rights. If ICE comes to your workplace, if ICE comes to your door, you do not have to open the door. You ask them for a judicial warrant, not an administrative warrant. ICE very often tries to show you some official looking paper in order to intimidate people and to let them in. Again, remember, they rely on the perception of power. No. You don't just get some paper and let them in. You look for a judicial warrant. You look for a judge's signature on that piece of paper. If there is not a judge's signature on that piece of paper, you do not have to open the door. Number two, you can ask them to leave. If they do not procure a warrant, you can ask them to leave. You can stay silent. If they have detained you, you can say, I would like to remain silent. You invoke your right. You do not have to share personal information. They want to know what your immigration status is. Even if you're a US citizen, if they want to ask you, are you a US citizen? You tell them, I don't have to answer that question. You tell them, I do not have to answer that question. You do not have to, they ask you where you were born, I don't have to answer that question. They ask for your immigration status, I do not have to answer your question. They do not, unless you are being officially detained, if they have a judicial warrant. And by the way, you do not have to sign anything. And if they want to keep asking you questions, you say, I would like to speak to my attorney. In New York and California, you have a right to an attorney, including if you are undocumented or anything. You would say, I would like an attorney. Or if you are outside of the states of New York or California, you can say, I would like to speak to an attorney. And you can get your own attorney. Or you can procure your own attorney. So you say, I want to talk to a lawyer. Know your rights. Use them if you are a citizen. Use them if you are not a US citizen, green card holder, whatever it may be. And also, one simple thing you can do is share your rights. Know your rights information. How do you do that? Two things. You can go to my Rep AOC account if you want, and there's a slide with Know Your Rights. If you want to go grassroots style, you can use mine. They're ACLU, a bunch of people have them. Print them out, hand them out. Hand them out to people. Or if you sign, again, this is like not a plug. You can Google this in lots of places, but one thing that we're presently working on is that if you're on my newsletter or if you sign on to my newsletter, we are working on printable PDFs that we're going to soon email out to our whole newsletter list so that you can print it out. You can tape it up in storefronts. You can drop palm cards in small businesses. If you are local to New York City, we are going to be having kind of volunteer events where we're going to go bodega by bodega, drop in palm cards so that people can know their rights. And the slower they go, the less they can break, okay? That's one example. Number two, in some of these federal purges, with what they're trying to do, they want to send you a little letter saying, oh, we're going to offer you a buyout. Don't take it. Don't take it. Don't take the buyout. You have about 3 days, like all those federal workers that got that got those notices. And of course, you know, these decisions are personal. The decisions are ultimately up to you. But my opinion is that this is a bunch of BS. And what they want everyone to do is to comply in advance. Do not comply in advance. Make them make you. Make them make you. And make them, if they're committing crimes, make them make you. Because we are going to win. I want you to understand right now, we're going to go through an ugly, ugly period. But move in the faith that we are going to win. Okay? It is, nobody knows what is going to happen between now and then, but winning and prevailing is a decision. It is a choice. It's not, oh, what's going to happen? I don't know what's going to happen. It's, what am I going to dedicate myself to? And so it can be actions small, it can be actions large. I am giving you a small action, a tiny action. If you are exhausted and you don't have any energy at all, the one thing I want you to do is to look up your rights, for you to know your rights in case ICE shows up to your workplace. Just Google it, understand it, practice it, go on Rep AOC. If you have no energy at all, just do that. Just Google your rights. If you've got some energy, if you're itching to mobilize and you're in a community like mine, pick up some palm cards or print out some stuff on your own and take it to a local bodega and say, hey, can I post this up? Okay? That's level 2, right? There are actions you could take at every level. If you want to do even more, there are community organizations that you can engage in. We need to be little grains of sand in the large gears of this machine. And so please do not fall for the illusion or the lie that any action is too small. There is no action too small. In fact, because there are so many of us, when millions of people do tiny things, we can disrupt these systems, okay? So those are two key things. Now, let's level up. Let's zoom out a little bit in terms of what else we can do. Well, Donald Trump did something very interesting. In order for us to understand the political landscape, Republicans didn't just win the White House, as we know. Republicans also won majorities in the Senate and majorities in the House. And what is happening right now is that Republicans are rolling over. You know, people are saying, where's Congress? Where's Congress? Congress, I'll get to Democrats in another section here. But Congress itself, the reason Congress as an institution is not doing anything is because Republicans hold the keys to both the House and the Senate. So if the House is going to do something, you need the Republican speaker to make the choice to do it. The Senate, if the Senate is going to do something, the Senate has a Republican majority that holds the keys to that as well. So there are two strategies that we have in terms of the Senate and in terms of the House. I'm going to start with the House. The House has 435 members, but the Republicans won the majority, but that majority is very, very slim right now. I think it's about 4. I believe it's a majority of about 4. Even with 4 Republicans making the difference between a Democratic House and a Republican majority House, Donald Trump still decided to appoint several of them to his administration, which has dramatically reduced temporarily the Republican voting majority in the House. Those people that he appointed are tried to appoint Matt Gaetz, but Matt Gaetz resigned when he was named, when Donald Trump was going to appoint him, and then the Senate blocked it. But still, there's a vacancy in Matt Gaetz's seat. There's a vacancy in Representative Waltz's seat. And there's a vacancy here in New York with Elise Stefanik's seat. 2 of those seats, Waltz and Gaetz, are in the state of Florida. And they are strolling their way to a special election. Now, that special election, I believe, is happening on April 1st in the state of Florida. We need to have a show of elevated numbers. We should have a show of elevated numbers in those 2 special elections. Now, people are going to say, oh, she's sending you on a wild goose chase. These are strongly Republican districts, but Washington and decision makers often look at the margins of these results to try to glean how people are feeling in this time. And first and foremost, the level of breakneck speed and not just speed, the level of just breaking that this administration and that Elon Musk is doing right now does have the power to transcend